Okay. So I think hello Su Mingku, my friend. Uh, oh, Professor Yangsheng Su has joined. Okay. Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello, Yongxing.
Hello, Professor
Hello,
Yangsheng Su. You are muted. Please unmute.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good to see
Very
you
nice
all.
to see you.
Good to see you all.
Yes. Of course, of course. We are delighted. Today is Professor Maurice Salles' session. So today I will give a brief introduction, and then because you all scholars know very well Professor Maurice Salles, but in our study circle there are young people who newly entered this world. So for them, I need to talk little bit on Professor Maurice Salles, and then we'll give the floor to Professor Maurice. So let me begin. But one good news I just wanted to share that our missed session was session 5, Professor Martin Van Hees, and instead of him, we found a new young scholar, Dr. Hein Duizef. He is from Netherlands, and he will speak on responsibility void and collective responsibility. So the date is so far decided on January 16, right, sir? Prashanto sir, is January 16. So far I remember.
I
I'll
don't remember.
yes. I'll clear this. I'll share an email since our convener has finalized his topic and all the dates and his and the person, everything he has decided. So I'll just communicate to you all the update of the missing session 5. We have already set and finalized. So this announcement will be coming soon in 2 or 3 days. Through email, I will let you all know. So let me today start the session 9. Distinguished colleagues, respected scholars, dear friends, and participants from different parts of the world, good evening. On behalf of the IWSW Study Circle, means Individual Wellbeing and Social Welfare Study Circle, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to session 9, scheduled for this today, December 13, 2025 at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Dhaka time. We are truly honored by your presence and continued engagement in his collective intellectual journey. Today's session addresses a theme that lies at the very heart of normative social inquiry and public reasoning, titled Individual Rights and Social Welfare. This topic is not merely theoretical, it speaks directly to some of the most pressing dilemmas of our time. How societies balance individual freedoms with collective responsibilities, how justice is institutionalized, and how welfare system can be designed without eroding human dignity. It is therefore a privilege, indeed a rare intellectual opportunity, to have with us Professor Maurice Salles as our speaker for this session. Professor Maurice Salles is a distinguished scholar at Université de Caen Normandie, France, and an internationally respected authority in social choice theory, welfare economics, and normative political economy. His work stands at the intersection of economics, philosophy, and public policy, engaging deeply with foundational questions of rights, collective decision making, and social justice. Professor Saleh is an honorary research associate, Center of Philosophy and Natural and Social Science at London School of Economics and Political Science, LEC. He was previously professor of economics at the University Caen Normandie, teaching from 1970 till 2009. He was coordinating editor of Social Choice and Welfare 1984 to 2011 and served as president of Society for Social Choice and Welfare in 2012 to 2013. He has worked on social choice theory, cooperative game theory, welfare economics, and mathematical methods in economics. Over the years, Professor Saleh has made a seminal contribution to our understanding of individual rights within collective frameworks, the limits of aggregation, and the ethical underpinnings of welfare evaluation. His scholarship is characterized not only by analytical rigor, but also by moral seriousness as an instance that economic reasoning must remain attentive to human values, democratic ideals, and social fairness. What makes Professor Salles' work particularly relevant for us, especially in societies marked by inequality, exclusion, and contested democratic transitions, in his insistence that rights and welfare are not opposing principles, but must be understood in a carefully reasoned and dialogic relationship. This dialogic relationships, this is uh, 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 and this insight resonates strongly with the spirit of our individual welfare and social welfare study circle, where we seek to bridge theory and lived realities through critical dialogue. We are deeply grateful to Professor Saleh for generously sharing his time and insights with us today, and for engaging with participants across global, geographical and disciplinary boundaries. Professor Saleh, it is an honor to have you with us. I am now warmly invite you to deliver your lecture on individual right and social welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. Really. I am sorry that my English is far from perfect. And since I retired, uh, I don't speak English very often. So part of my English has disappeared during the last 15 years or so. Well, so I will speak today on rights, freedom, liberty, and social choice. Mm, It's more precise than the general title, which is indicated here, individual rights and social welfare. The next slide, please. This presentation is on a strict descent from Amartya Sen's paper entitled The Impossibility of Operation Liberal, a paper which appeared in the Journal of Political Economy in 1970. And after 1970, and other developments have been, and other roads have been followed to describe how we can incorporate rights within an aggregation system of values. And this is, for instance, the work of Garden Force, and then by there is an important paper by Wolf Gartner, Prashanta, and Kotaro Suzumura. And there is also a very nice paper by Bezalel Peleg on this aspect of rights dealt with game forms or effectivity functions. Next slide, please. So my first section in this presentation will be about sense theorem. And I will need for this to give some formal definitions, but well, they are more or less the definitions which have been already introduced by Rajat Deb in his presentation. So it will be a reminder for many of you. So we have a set X of social states. And I would prefer in that context to call them states of the world. I will explain that in a few moments. You will see very soon that the set of social states is particularly important in the context of sense theorem and its descent. I remember that Rajat Deb had mentioned the very nice introduction by Prashanta to the book by Eric Maskin and Amartya Sen. And there is a very nice lines in this book, in this preface, in this introduction by Prashanta about what is an aggregation of social preference, of individual preferences. And in particular, about two different aspects. And in this case, in the case of my presentation, you will easily guess that only one of the two aspects is considered here, because there is no question of decision taken by a group of individuals through some kind of voting or things like that, because of the set of social states or state of the world. So they are not candidates, or they are not policy programs or anything like that. They can be partially that, but only very partially. So we have the notion of preference over X as binary relation, and I denote them by this symbol here. I don't know if you see my. No, you can't see, I think. So it's denoted like a sign greater or equals, but it means at least as good as here. So X is in relation to Y with this binary relation, meaning X is at least as good as Y. And from this, you can define the asymmetric part of this relation, which is a strict preference. And with a strict preference, you have X is better than Y. And you have the symmetric part in difference, and which means that there is any difference between X and Y. Next slide, please. So the set of agents will be denoted by capital N, and there is no need to assume that N is finite for sense theorem. You may remember that N finite is absolutely necessary for Arrow's theorem. And we know that if, whatever the meaning of this, if N is infinite, then the theorem is not true. The impossibility is not true, given the conditions on the aggregation procedure. For the preference of a given individual I is denoted by this the symbol with I as and the social preference will be denoted by a capital S with well, near the symbol. All the preferences, be they individual or social, will be assumed to be complete. That is a quite important assumption. Maybe it's a bit problematic given the size of X, but for the instant, we will assume that they are complete. That is, given X and Y, we will have a possibility to say that X is socially as good as Y, or that Y is socially as good as X, whatever X and Y are. Next slide, please. So we have the transitivity property, which are the rationality properties, which are going to be associated to the social preference. And so we have the transitivity of at least as good as Y. By the way, this property implies that the strict preference is transitive, and also that the indifference relation is transitive, which is probably a problem. So I introduce other transitivity properties, and one I call S transitivity, which is transitivity. S is for semi-order. And in a semi-order, you have this property. You see that if W is strictly preferred to X and X strictly preferred to Y, and Y, there is an difference between Y and Z, then W is strictly preferred to Z. So it will be the case for the social preference in some instances. So next slide. With I have another type of transitivity, which I call I transitivity. I is for interval order. It's not associated to the indifference. It is for interval order. And in the interval order, you see that the indifference is in the middle, in some sense. In the so if you have W strictly prefer to X and in the difference between X and Y strictly prefer to Z, then you have W strictly prefer to Z. The fourth notion of transitivity type notion is quasi-transitivity, and it is the transitivity of the strict preference. And the name, I think, the name of quasi-transitivity has been given by Amartya Sen to this property. And the fifth transitivity type of property is the acyclicity, and it is an acyclicity of the strict preference. And it says that you cannot find a finite subset of the set of a set X of options or alternatives of social states, such that you have a cycle with strict preferences, like here for the k, the x1 to xk, you have x1 k is strictly preferred to x2, x2 k is strictly preferred to x3, and so on. And you come back to the origin by having x cap strictly preferred to x1. Next slide, please. So I will use as social procedure, well, I have the social preference, but I will use also the choice functions. So a choice function is simply functions which select elements in every subset of the set of the set X of social states. So the only condition is that if you select options in a subset A, capital A, it must be in the subset capital A. You must select option within A, and you must, well, for choice function as defined here, you have always a choice. So the choice is never empty. So the next slide, please. So I consider the set of complete preorders over X. The complete preorders over X. A preorder is a mathematical term for what has been called by arrow weak orderings. And a complete preorder is transitive, at least as good for individuals. Is supposed to be transitive. It is complete, and that's a complete preorder. So it means that if you have a finite set, well, it's more simple like that. If you have a finite set of elements, if you have a preorder over this finite set, you can rank all the options with possible ties. That's a complete preorder. But of course, you don't need to consider only finite sets. So you have to define preorders with more general definitions than the, the ranking I mentioned on finite sets. So each individual will have a complete preorders, complete ranking, if you want, over the set of social states, and the the individual's preferences are given by what we call in social choice generally a profile. Here, a profile is a function from the set of individuals into the set of complete preorders. Well, this is not complicated. It means only that you are affecting a label to the complete preorder to associate this complete preorder to some individual. So you have Mr. 1 will have preorder number 1, Mr. 2, and so on and so on. And since the set of individuals is not assumed to be finite, I cannot make the profile as it is done normally as a list, as it is written here in the slide, as a list of preferences, of individual preferences. So you take you define the profile not like a list of, or vector. Some people still speak of vector, but I prefer list because there is no vector space behind this notation. So I prefer list. And for Sen theorem, there is no need to have this list. You can have a more general notion, which is a profile given as a function from the set from the set individuals into the set of complete preorders. Well, this is just technical stuff without importance. Next slide. So what I call an aggregation function, I am not alone to call an aggregation function, is a function which associates to profile a social preference. Social preference. So you have individual data, the preference of the individuals, and you associate to this data a social preference. When the social preference is a complete preorder, the aggregation function is the Arrovian social welfare function. When you consider a social preference which is complete and satisfy the acyclicity I mentioned previously, the aggregation function has been called by Amartya Sen social decision function. And when it satisfies quasi-transitivity, I remember that it is the transitivity of the strict preference, the better than, the preferred. It is called a quasi-transitivity social decision function, quasi-transitive social decision function. Next slide, please. And I have decided to call a social choice function a function which associates to a profile, like previously, a choice function. So there is no binary relation. We have directly a choice function. Rather than obtaining a social ranking or some social preference relation, we then obtain a mechanism that will select social states in each subset of the set of possible social states. Next slide, please. So I will recall Sen theorem for social decision functions. It is presented as such in the Journal of Political Economy paper of 1970. So you have two conditions on the social decision function, on the aggregation function. The first one is a weak Pareto principle, which is the same condition as the condition presented by Rashad Deb regarding arrow theorem. It says, it's very simple, if you have a profile and in this profile, and you have two social states, X and Y, and in this profile, every individual prefers X to Y, then society must rank X before Y. And the new condition called, I think, in the paper, in Sen's paper, liberalism condition, it says that for each individual, you have two social states, at least, such that if the individual prefers the social states AI to the social state BI, then AI will be ranked before BI in the social ranking. And if the individual prefer BI to AI, then BI will be ranked before AI in the social ranking. You see already why it is important to say that the alternatives, the options in the set X are not candidates to an election, because otherwise this would mean that individual I has the power to impose something to the collectivity. Impose, if AI and BI are two candidates, you see immediately that if individual I prefer AI to BI, then the society will rank AI before BI. This is well, I would say, very limited dictatorship. Dictatorship only on two elements. So, in terms of interpretation, it's impossible to interpret the sense theorem within the domain of voting theory. Well, impossible is possible, but it's not very meaningful. Next slide. So Sen has very quickly seen that there is no need to assume the liberalism condition as I just give it. For every individual. He will get his impossibility result if only two individuals have this property, have this power, I would say. So, and it is called minimal liberalism condition. So it says only that there are two individuals, I and J, and two social states, A and B for I and C and D for J, for which if individual I prefer A to B, then society rank A before B, and if he prefers B to A, society will rank B before A, and the same for J and C and D. If J prefers C to D, then society will rank C before D, and if individual J prefer D to C, then society will rank D before C. And you see that it's very simple. If the number of individuals is at least two, and the number of social states is also at least two, there is no social decision function satisfying condition P, Pareto, unanimity, and condition of minimal liberalism. Well, so next slide. So Saint gave a very famous example, à mon avis, not necessarily. It has been a bit expanded here to explain exactly what is the situation. His famous example was about the book Lady Chatterley's Lover. So I think this probably is an adaptation of a same example. I don't remember, but maybe it is already, I don't remember exactly. After a shipwreck, two men, Mr. Prude and Mr. Lascivious, are the only survivors and the only human beings on an island. They were able to rescue a single book from the shipwreck, Lady Chatterley's Lovers, famous and one-time scandalous novel by D.H. Lawrence. And the two men have to solve a dilemma about the attribution of the book. They consider three social states, A, B, and C. So you can imagine that the social states are description of the world with simply something which is specified. They are all the same, but not one aspect is not exactly identical. In A, Mr. Prude read the book. In B, Mr. Lascivious read the book, and in C, neither Mr. Prude nor Mr. Lascivious read the book. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in same example, the liberalism condition gives to Mr. Prude the decisiveness, that is the possibility to act over N and C, and give to Mr. Lascivious the decisiveness over B and C. Indeed, if you consider the pair, if you consider the pair So A, well, the set where you have A and C. Mr. Prude is probably the only concern since option A and C differ in his own reading of the book. It is the only difference. And it's the same for Mr. Lascivious and the pair BC. Now suppose that the preference over ABC of Mr. Prude and Mr. Lascivious are given by the two preferences which are on the slide. That is, Mr. Prude prefers C to A and A to B, and well, you know, he has a complete preorder, so he prefers C to B. And Mr. Lascivious prefer A to B and B to C. Now you see already that A is preferred to B by both. Next slide. Since they prefer both A to B, by a condition Pareto, condition P, you must have A rank before B in the social preference. Now, by condition of minimal liberalism, considering that Mr. Prude prefers C to A, you must have C ranked by the society before A. And considering that Mr. Lascivious prefers B to C, you must obtain at the social level B ranked before C. And you can see you have A at the social level, A preferred to B, B preferred to C, and C preferred to A. And you have a cycle. And since you have a cycle, you have no social decision. You have no social decision function. And you have well, in fact, the theorem is sense theorem is only a formal presentation of the example. Not much. It's very easy to go from the example to the formal presentation. Now you can obtain the same theorem for social choice function. It has been done already by Amartya Sen in some of the papers he published after 1970. So you have to adapt the two conditions to the new formalism. So I recall that in the case of social choice functions, you associate to data of individual preferences, you associate to this data choice function. So the weak Pareto principle is becoming the following. If you have a profile pi and two social states X and Y, and for each individual you have X prefer to Y, then Y cannot be chosen in all subset to which X belongs. To X belongs. Well, if Y would be chosen, would have been chosen, it would mean that the power of the unanimity is not here. There is no power unanimous. The set of all individuals have no real power. And the liberalism condition adapted to the social choice functions. It's about the same principle as with the weak Pareto principle. For each individual I, you will have two social states, AI and BI, such that whenever I prefer AI to BI will not be chosen in all subset A to which AI belongs. And the same if you reverse the preference. That is, if the individual I prefer BI to AI will not be chosen in a subset to which BI belongs. Next slide, please. So you have also, as in the case of aggregation functions, you will have minimal liberalism condition saying that the former condition of liberalism is applied only to two individuals. So this does not say more than that. And you have sense theorem in that case, saying that if the number of individuals is two and the number of social states is also at least two, there is no social choice function satisfying the two conditions. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I apply the example of Lascivius and Proud to this new formalism of social choice functions. So you see that if you consider the set ABC and the choice on the set ABC, you can see that by the weak Pareto principle, B cannot belong to this choice set because it is Pareto dominated by A. And by the minimal liberalism condition, you can see that A cannot belong to the choice. And B cannot belong to the choice also because, well, in the first case, because of Proud, and in the second case, because of Lascivius and their power, their respective power. And so there is no element at all in the choice set. It can be neither O, neither A, neither B, neither C. So it's empty. And as I define the choice function as giving non-empty results, you have the theorem. Well, now I will describe some work which has been done later after Salles, and it's about limited rights. And I go back to the two examples. So you consider two social states, so two states of the world, A and B. They are exactly the same, except that in A, you are sleeping on your right side, and B, you are sleeping on your back. Suppose you slightly prefer to sleep on the right side. So you prefer A to B. Sense condition in the aggregation functions framework then says that it is necessary that social state A be ranked over social state B. Of course, if A and B are two options over on which the individual has power. In the social side function setting, things might appear even more extreme. In fact, perhaps I say caricatural. In a set of social states to which A and B belong, social state B is excluded from choice. It is not possible for you to sleep on the back. In some sense, you have not the right to sleep on the back. Next slide. So we can introduce what I call limited rights and aggregation limited rights. The first condition is, as I have called it, limited liberalism condition. And instead, in the aggregation function approach, instead of having AI socially preferred to BI, you will have AI at least as good as BI. And the same if you reverse the individual preference. And you can also introduce a condition which is minimal in the sense that you apply the former condition, the previous condition, to the case of two individuals, not all individuals. So next slide. So the first theorem says that if you satisfy the condition of Pareto and the new condition, then there is no social welfare function which is possible. There is something which is imposed that the set AB must not be the same as the set CD. But it is not excluded that the intersection is not it's not necessary that the four A, B, C, D be all distinct. That means that you can have an intersection, non-intersection between A, B, and C, D, but they are not the same options. And in fact, I noticed that this result existed in the literature only 1 year ago. I completely missed this result, which is due to John Aldrich, which is a American political scientist. And it has been published in Public Choice in 1977. And what I obtained is that we can obtain this impossibility result for aggregation functions whose values are complete semi-orders or complete interval orders. And this is rather technical, but this means that between Aldrich and Sen, you have still some possibility. Alors, then I must mention something. When you consider what Amartya Sen has called Pareto extension rules, the simplest Pareto extension rule is the following. It says that you have X socially preferred to Y if and only if all individuals prefer X to Y. That is, it's a Pareto property which is transformed in rules, which means that otherwise, when you have no unanimity, you will have a social indifference. This Pareto extension rule will give you always a quasi-transitive social preference. But you can notice that it gives to each individual the limited liberal power which is defined in the previous slide. That is, yes, when you see the first definition here, limited liberalism condition, you can see that with the Pareto extension rule, each individual has this power for every pair of options, not only for two options. So it shows that between, well, I would say Ulrich and Sen, there is something which is very specific. Next slide. I will illustrate the result by the following example, completely identical, except that in A, individual I eats legs of lamb with garlic, and in B, without garlic. Individual I is a garlic addict and accordingly strongly prefers A to B. The social states C and D are also identical, except that in C, individual J puts some perfume before going to sleep, and in D does not. Individual J has a passion for perfume and so strongly prefers C to D. Previously, next slide.